Well, hello, neighbor. It's good to see you this morning on 10 with Tom, and I'm here with my good friend, Mr. Rogers, who, by the way, grew up not too far from me in a little town called Latrobe, Pennsylvania, about 10 minutes from where I grew up. And so I've always been a big Mr. Rogers fan, and what a great influence he has been on so many children through the years. So delighted to be with Mr. Rogers today, and I hope you guys are having a good day in your neighborhood. Just wanted to catch everybody up on some things that are going on. Of course, you guys all know about our Zoom meeting Saturday night, and we hope you'll be a part of that. And that's the biggest thing that's happening. That'll be Sunday night, and we're meeting Sunday night during youth group time at 5 o'clock. Make sure you bring your own dinner, and we're going to have a good time together on Sunday. So we hope you'll join us Sunday night at 5 o'clock. Now, for today, our question of the day is: how many people here can speak in a foreign language? I tried a little bit of French, but didn't do really well at it. Probably the best thing for me about French was it helped me understand what was going on in the hockey games I used to listen to when I would get the broadcast from Montreal. I was always a big hockey fan, and I learned just enough French to be able to follow what was going on when I listened to games on the radio. But don't ask me to try and share it now, because, boy, I was probably the worst student ever in my high school when it came to French. But had a good time with it, had some great times in classes. But that was my foreign language. But some of you guys may be able to communicate in other languages, so I'd love to hear what languages you all can communicate in. So we'll give you that for today. For today, I wanted to think back. Will, at our last Zoom meeting last Saturday night, was sharing on Philippians 4:13, the verse that says, "For I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." And I think a lot of us, and Will pointed this out so very well, a lot of us look at that and go, we can do anything. Well, it's a little more to it as we read it in its context, that we can do the things that God is equipping us for when we do them in His strength. That when God's involved, anything that He wants done is possible, and He's going to use us to help accomplish His purposes. And for me, that happens best on a mission trip. When I look at things that on my own I just can't do, but when I get together with a bunch of other people, we can suddenly have an incredible opportunity to make a big change somewhere else. And so my very first mission trip took me to a little town on the shores of Lake Michigan, a town called Benton Harbor. Now, Benton Harbor at one time was a beautiful little city directly across Lake Michigan from Chicago. It was a resort community, but over the years, as people moved from Chicago, a lot of the locals moved across the river into a community called St. Joseph's. And St. Joseph's became a very affluent town. But Benton Harbor slowly began to decay. And whereas in the 1970s, Benton Harbor was called an all-American city because it was one of the finest cities in the United States, by the time we went in 1987, USA Today posted a list of the best and worst cities to live in America. They listed 300 cities. Number 300, or the worst city to live in the United States, was Benton Harbor, Michigan. And so on that summer of 1987, we took a mission trip to Benton Harbor to see what we could do, because we knew we'd have the possibility to have an impact. When we got there, there's a couple of things that we noticed. Number one, the town was almost deserted. Now, there were people that lived in homes in the town, but the downtown area was like a ghost town. There were 4 buildings that were occupied, or 4 stores, not even full buildings, but 4 storefronts in Benton Harbor that were open. And this was a town of 30,000 people. And so for that community to have that many businesses, it was shocking. And a lot of the buildings that were left in town that had been abandoned had broken glass everywhere, doors ripped open. There was a lot of crime and vandalism going on. It was just not a real good place. So throughout the week as we were working in different parts of the town, and we were told at the beginning of the week to be very, very careful when we were out, especially when we weren't working. That the police were aware of what we were doing there, and neighbors certainly knew, but it was not a real safe place to be. And we didn't really understand that a whole lot. And so when we would get back to the school after our work during the day, we would notice that there were some kids that were kind of hanging around the school. They weren't part of the mission team. But our guys started inviting them in to play basketball. And so they would play basketball for a while, and then all of a sudden, A couple of policemen came in, and somebody from the school came in and said, no, 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 you guys can't have them in here. They're not allowed to come in. Well, we thought that was kind of strange, but okay. And so they escorted them out and said, hey, you can't come in here this week while this group is here. And so when our kids asked the police about it later, they said, well, this is for your safety. And I'm like, okay. So what they came up with the next day when they came back from their work sites, the kids were still hanging out. So they invited them to the outdoor playground that they had here that had basketball hoops and started playing on the outdoor hoops. Well, the police came over again and said, no, 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 you guys are going to have to leave the school property. You're not allowed here while we get this group here. And so now our kids are really mystified. And so the next day, they noticed they were all standing across the street at an abandoned gas station. And so our kids, when they got free time, they went across the street, now off school property, and started to hang out with these guys. And what they were finding out was that these guys really had nothing to do in Benton Harbor. All the places had closed down. And so there was so little for them to do, and they were so hungry for interaction. And so we worked that week, and we wondered, had we made a difference? We found out as we were leaving town, because you don't listen to the news when you're on a mission trip, during the week we were there in that town of 30,000 people, there were 8 murders in 7 nights. That's an astonishing figure for anywhere. Even Jacksonville, which has over 1 million people. But in a town of 30,000 to have 8 murders in 7 nights is just unheard of. So then we began to realize, okay, this is kind of a dangerous place. And so the following year, we were going on a trip to Rockford, Illinois. And Benton Harbor's on the way, so we decided to drive through Benton Harbor and see if our work had made a difference. And everybody kept saying, no, don't do that, you'll be discouraged, it'll be deflating. But when we rode through and started going back to the houses we had worked on the year before, we were finding out that there were signs up proclaiming the new Benton Harbor all over the place. Banners hanging from the street poles. There were signs for neighborhood watch communities in a lot of the places where we were working. And suddenly Benton Harbor was starting to take some pride in itself. And so rather than being discouraged, we were energized. We had a great week in Rockford, and we decided, let's go back to Benton Harbor the following year. And so we did. And in 1989, we continued the work in Benton Harbor, and we were seeing some tremendous things happen in Benton Harbor, Michigan. Now, I got to tell you, there were only 300 students that came in that week to work. But 300 students changed the attitude in that community. Well, it's been almost 30 years now, in fact, over 30 years, and Benton Harbor is now back to where it was before we got there. The number of groups that go in that suddenly stopped. Benton Harbor was no longer a focus of groups coming in. Crime has gotten worse. The educational system is really struggling. And it's a place that really needs people to love on it. It's a town that's almost given up on itself. While all you need to do is drive across a bridge into St. Joseph's, and you find a thriving community with lots of jobs and beautiful lands and golf courses and all this. And I can remember one of our students, as we drove from St. Joseph's into Benton Harbor in 1987, their response was, I didn't know how much of a difference you could make just by driving over a bridge. And we live in places that are pretty affluent, that we have a lot of resources, and yet there are folks all over the world who don't have the same things we do. Some of them are right here in our own country. And so when we go over a bridge into a new territory, we can bring hope. And so I want to encourage you guys, even though we're a long ways off from next summer, to be thinking about going on a mission trip next summer. Driving across a bridge, whether it's symbolic or whether it's real, into a new community where we can share the love of Christ and bring hope to people that need it. And so I don't know what our mission trip may look like next year, but I hope you'll be a part of it. So begin to pray about that. Begin to think about what it is that you'd like to do, and we'll be keeping you posted on what's going to happen in terms of a mission trip for next year, hopefully within the next couple of months. So that's our word for today. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. We love you, but remember, we can do all things through Christ where He calls us. And I hope He's calling you to missions for the summer of 2021. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you tomorrow.